One. Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Coolbaugh. I have with me a very special returning guest today, Michael R. Fletcher. Mike, how are you doing today?
I am good. How you doing, man?
Oh, excellent, excellent. Anytime I can talk to any guys from Wizards, Warriors, and Words, I feel pretty good. I've been trying to connect with Jed for a while, but that pesky Australian time, it's kind
He's
of
so
hard this
busy
time. But
too. He's
yeah,
yeah.
he's really busy. Yeah. Like every time it seems like he's not busy, then I'm slammed. So it just kind of keeps going. But yeah, but anytime, it's so funny because I was just talking to several authors that I've interviewed in the last couple of weeks, and they're like, "What's your favorite podcast?" I was like, "Well, it's on pause," but I was like, "There's plenty of episodes." I was like, "Just go." And I was talking to this one author, Ryan, and we were talking about your guys's. I think it was a double interview with Brian Stavely, and I keep going back to that one because of a particular book I'm writing. I was like, "Yeah, it's a gold mine." I was like, "Just go." And a couple people messaged me back. They were like, yeah, I'm on like season two, or I don't even know. They're like 60 episodes in within like 2 weeks. So I was like, that's pretty good. I was like, I know they weren't like super long, but I was like, that's still pretty good. So
Yeah.
especially with writing and stuff. But
Yeah. That podcast was a blast to do.
oh,
I think if anything, we were accidentally useful rather than sort of intentionally. Like Jed was always like, "Oh, this is a writing advice podcast," and I was always like, "No, it's not. This is just like four idiots babbling." And like it maybe we sort of accidentally say something useful in there, like gold.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think because like somebody had asked me about it, 'cause they're like, "Oh, what do you think?" I was like, I remember the first time I listened to you guys, and I was actually on my way to Michigan to see my family with my wife, and I put you guys on, and I think it was like the first three episodes. She was just like, "What are we listening to?" And I was like, "Magic. This is magic." I think I busted through. I was like, I think it was like, yes, I had 10 episodes out, and I was just like waiting for the next one. Then I always had to wait, so I tried to wait to try and collect them, but I just couldn't. It was like my favorite thing to do on Monday morning was like listen on the way to work. I had like an hour drive there and back, so it was really nice. But yeah, but I was talking to a couple people about those, and I felt like it was super helpful though, which is why I'm excited to go on, to SSF Addicts with Adrian and MJ and Andy Peliquin really soon because I just think that two people's great. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm really excited. I got some seminars coming up and stuff, so I'll be throwing some emails to you guys, stuff like that. Be like, hey, who's interested in this? That kind of thing. I think I'll talk to you about it later, but I think there's one that you'd be really interested in. That's basically kind of like, how do you, what kind of, things have you gotten from your DMing or, like your gamification of things and then, come into writing. I had a couple of people send me some pretty cool questions just in general about that because I was talking to a couple other people about that. I actually was telling them about going to listen to, especially what you were talking about on your guys' podcast because I always liked what you were talking about, like the magic system and stuff like that. So I was like, I think this is helpful. So I had a couple people talk to me about that, which was pretty cool. But they're like, yeah, these are really cool. I'm like, yeah, yeah. I was like, be ready because I was like, gonna be crying or upset or angry at some point at Mike because of what he wrote at some point. So and then had somebody get back to me, they're like, man, you weren't kidding. I'm like, yeah. So I probably had to prep them a little bit. But yeah. It was really cool though, because I was listening to Adrian's first episode. Um, oh, oh my God, and now I'm blanking. With his buddy. Who wrote Kings of the Wild? Having a day.
Oh, God, son of wow.
I don't know why I'm blanking. I just listened to
Yeah,
that
I am
episode.
too.
But yeah, but he was like, it was so funny because I'm driving and he started talking about Beyond Redemption. It's like, yeah, the Michael R. Fletcher guy. I just started busting out laughing. But I just thought it was so funny. But yeah, but they were talking, about Beyond Redemption. So I thought that was really cool. So that's definitely one my buddy and I are doing for book club. So I was talking about I actually sent him your clip at one point where you were like doing your pitch for it, and he was like loves Pokemon. And he goes, "Oh my God, this sounds amazing." And then I sent him the game that you guys did with the bad reviews, and the one that was
Ah,
just like so crazy that it kind of didn't make any sense to me. And you were like, "That's mine. I wrote that book." So I sent him that, and he was like so confused, but he's like really excited for that. But yeah, I feel like you've had so much go on since our last interview. It was like October 21st of 2021. So let's talk about that a little bit. I actually, just to help you and myself, because you've had so much go on, I actually pulled up Goodreads. So I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you had She Dreams in Blood, Obsidian Path number two. And then obviously An End of Sorrow, Obsidian Path, number three. And then Sin and Sorrow, right? Number three, A City of Sacrifice. I think since then, also like Norsko Groans, you and Clayton. And I know I'm probably missing like two more books in there, but I think
Uh,
that's what you've
yeah,
had since then.
the last Manifest Delusions
That's
novel
right.
just came out.
Yep.
Um, I think that's it. And then I've got a book dropping April. And my agent is currently reading a middle grade fantasy I did with my daughter.
Oh, I
So
forgot
we'll
about that.
we'll see what happens with that. If he likes
Yeah.
it, he'll shop it. If he doesn't like it, I guess I'll self publish it. Like I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Do you mind if we talk about that for a minute? Because I totally
Yeah,
forgot
sure.
about that. So I'm just curious, like, how did that come about? Like, you and your daughter, were just kind of talking about ideas or just
Yeah,
telling
so
stories back and forth.
she's
Like,
she's a huge Wings of Fire fan.
oh yeah,
And she's obviously aware that I write books, and so for years she has been saying like you write a book that I can read, because like the stuff I write isn't when she first started saying this she was like what 8 or 9 years old, and I'm not that's not my sort of target market.
yeah,
um and so finally, I think last year, or actually, no, it was early 2023. I finally said, "Ah, fuck it, yeah, okay, I'm going to write a middle grade fantasy book," and we sort of we built the world sort of with the two of us. We came up with the characters and stuff. She did a pile of concept sketches for it,
yeah. They looked awesome.
which are in the book. And got it finished, got it polished a bit, and sent it off to the agent. um we'll see what happens. It's very different for me. Obviously a lot less cursing, less sort of gratuitous gore and violence and that kind of stuff.
A lot less
But
bile.
yeah, it was a lot of fun to write though, because for that age group I just went, okay, just let everything go and embrace the creative side.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't worry so much about plot and that crap. Just like make something really cool that these kids haven't seen before. And
yeah,
that was
yeah.
sort of the goal. So we'll see if I actually achieve that or not. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that. No, that just sounds awesome. I had just talked to another author about that, and they were I guess now it was a while ago. Yeah, it must have been like months ago now. It feels like yesterday with my kid. But yeah, I just him and I were talking about it. He goes, "Yeah, Mike's doing that with his daughter." He goes, "That just like sounds really cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, and it's kind of cool because you get like half your audience there, it's like helping you write." So I don't know. From a creative side, I was like, God, that just sounds really cool. So now I'm like
Yeah.
shoving, trying to shove fantasy books into my 12-month-old, son's hands just to go the Michael R. Fletcher route. But yeah, that just sounds awesome. But you talked a little bit about, how it was different. I was just curious, like, what do you think like the hardest thing was for you, like in terms of doing that? Was it maybe like not plotting or, maybe characters were different or
um, you know what? It was actually really easy to write.
Mm,
And some books are different, some books are harder, require more
yeah.
thought and effort. This one kind of fell out of me in about 2 months.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
it's and it was I was writing it sort of at the same time as working on other projects.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'd,
yeah.
I'd work on this in the morning, and then afternoon I'd switch over to my other stuff. Um, the tricky part, and so Charlotte is my daughter. She said, "Don't write down to people. Don't write down to kids." She's like, "We understand what's going on." She's like, "Don't simplify it too much. Don't write down. Don't be preachy." So at the same time I want to say something there. It's not just a story strictly for entertainment, although
Yeah.
hopefully it's that, and that is sort of the important thing. But it's also an opportunity to sort of mess with young minds, which I don't usually get. I mean, aside from my own kid.
Yeah, yeah,
So really it's a chance to sort of like poke at some of the stuff these kids are growing up with, and not tell them anything. I'm not educating, but it's more a question of, well, questions. The characters learn that some of what they'd taken for granted, some of the stuff they'd been told from by their parents was wrong. And so it's sort of a lot about learning to question the your childhood programming kind of crap, which most
Oh
of us
wow.
don't really deal with until, much later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just find it interesting, that your daughter, said those kind of comments to you. I have definitely found, like, I'm a teacher, so I mess with young minds all the time, and I'm always trying to get them to question, and I've literally had parents get upset with me because, their kid will ask me a question, like I would say, like, like I had an eighth grader ask me a question and about, like, oh, Thomas Jefferson. And I told them the truth, and they got kind of upset with me about it. And I was like, well, I was like, your kid has the internet, I was like, your kid can, go and then, I have to have kids all the time that they go and, I just always find it interesting when parents, I'm like, well, I always tell them like, I'm not trying to have them question you, but just to question, just things in general, and, um, right now I have like freshmen that it's really cool. Like they're questioning, like, I'm teaching them all about 10,000 BCE. And then all of a sudden I told them we come back from break. I was like, yeah, I'm going to blow that whole theory up because of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. And all of a sudden it rewrites human history with just one site. So it's just kind of cool to see, where, kids like your daughter are, I definitely feel like that was used to be like a freshman or, a sophomore thing, back in the day. And now it's moved down. So I definitely agree with her. I think that, kids are, they're not stupid, that's for sure, and they definitely know more what's going on. So to me, it's just interesting to see that change in middle grade, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think you still have to teach them something. I think you do that in any book. So I think that makes total sense. But yeah, that's just super cool. I'm jealous. Like I said, I'm trying to get my kid to be an early reader. Maybe he'll be an early writer, something like that. But yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds really
that
cool.
I never really put effort into that. I mean, I guess she grew up with books all over the house. Um, but like it was something she did all on her own. It wasn't me pushing stuff. And it started with the Wings of Fire graphic novels, lots of pictures,
So
and she
good.
loved those. And then, at some point, I guess I mentioned like, there are novel versions of these and a lot more
Mhm.
detail and, a lot more
Yeah.
sort of into the story. And then she had to have them. And then so she's plowed through all of those. And
I tell you, as a reading interventionist, when I was doing that, like I love the Wings of Fire graphic novel because they always give those or Amulet to kids,
yeah,
and especially like certain kids that were like, I don't want to read anything, and then they'd be like hooked, and then yeah, it was like a nice like gateway. And I actually just talked to a teacher about this recently because they said that comics and graphic novels isn't reading. And I'm like, no, I'm like, you just like ruin, something for these kids. I was like, that's how I got into a lot of things was, was comic books and stuff. And, some kids are just more visual. So I was like, I think that's kind of cool. But, um, yeah, but it's interesting because I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this where we were like, how cool would it be to do something like the Wings of Fire graphic novel for that age for middle grade, and then get kids hooked on, like your world or something like that, and then to have books on top of that. So him and I have been playing with that idea for a while. I definitely find middle grade harder to write. I think some people kind of take it for granted, like, oh, you can just write whatever. But as your daughter said, like that's not the case. And I actually think that's why a lot of middle grade people that I talk to, find it so challenging because, it is hard as an adult to kind of go backwards and, think of that Peter Pan type of mentality. But I think
yeah,
you're smart because, you did it with your daughter. So
yeah. And I think I have I'm lucky maybe in that I'm juvenile and immature anyway,
it
and so
does
it's
help.
just
Yeah.
a little bit easier because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not really sort of a entirely grown up myself. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's I think it does help though. Like my wife says all the time, she's like, "Oh, you love toys, you love, these things." I'm like, "Yeah." Like I play with my son, I freaking love it. Like I have this submarine for like his birthday. It's like a really cool toy. You pull it, and he loves bath time. I was like, I love that kind of stuff. And like we'll go places, and she's like, "You guys are always pretending," and like, yeah, I was like, real adult life sucks. No matter how good your life is, you know what I mean? You gotta do taxes or just something stupid you don't want to do. I go to meetings, like, I love everybody I work with. Like, I don't want to go to a meeting. Like, if I want to do that, I work in an office, or people. Like, I want to go help kids and have fun with kids. I think that's why I like working with kids so much, is that I get to just do fun stuff and, help them keep some of that part of their kid alive, because I've had people that have helped me do that. And I think that's why I like books so much, and just different media, because I never really grew up, but I
yeah.
think we have more fun personally than people that did. So, but yeah, I just was curious. Are you thinking, if it does pretty well, you guys, maybe, is it a standalone or you're thinking about kind of expanding on that or?
It's definitely not a standalone. The intent was it for it to be part of a series.
Oh, cool.
Um, because I've never done this before, like the middle grade stuff, I have zero idea if it will sell, how it will sell.
Yeah, yeah,
So what happens really depends on, I guess first, whether the agent likes it and,
yeah, yeah,
decides to
yeah,
shop it. If it lands a publisher, then, I could easily write 3 or 10 books in the series. Like it's sort of
oh, it's cool.
a big enough story that there's a lot to work with there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And if I end up self-publishing it, then we see what happens.
yeah, yeah,
My guess is self-published middle grade stuff's not going to sell that well, just because of the audience, and parents are mostly they're gonna look for the stuff their kids are talking about, word
yep,
of mouth, and I'm not in there.
yeah, yeah.
And so we'll see what happens. If it does well, I'll write more. If 3 people buy it, then I'll go like, all right, cool. It was a fun project to do with my kid, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever. I will move on.
Oh, that's super cool. I just think that from the dad aspect, like just I was just talking to my wife about this, there's some things that, I just think would be cool to do. But like that, I just think from like a dad perspective, just being like just all the lessons that, you're teaching your kid, Charlotte through this, like, I just think that's really cool. So I think that even if you don't sell anything, like, I'm sure you will though, because I feel like people like myself will be like, oh, that sounds really interesting that Mike did that. And, I do think that I personally, from a podcaster standpoint, I'm really interested, first of all, to see how, that journey goes for you. I'm also really interested to see, how many people like myself are like, oh, Mike wrote it. I'm just going to go and buy it and read it, and I just feel like you have a lot of really interesting ideas. So I'm actually really interested to see, what you guys came up with, especially in terms of middle grade. I think that I don't know, I think maybe you surprise yourself. That's what I'm thinking. I think you have some really cool things there, and I think you'll get more people than you think personally, coming over it, like myself and trying it. But I hope it does well for you guys. I think that'd be really cool to
Yeah. I
see what
would
it
I
does.
would love for that to be sort of an ongoing project with her. That'd
Yeah.
be great.
And I
Yeah.
just have to say, like, not to jinx you, but like I've had like crazy things lately where people like a year ago were like, "Oh, this is just like a dumb idea," and then all of a sudden, it just like blows up. So I hope that that's
Yeah.
the case
That's
for you. I'm
honestly
trying to
that's
keep
kind
it
of
going in 2024. So
that's every book. Every book, before I start, I'm looking at it. I'm like, the fuck am I thinking? This is such a bad idea. It's
nobody's gonna read this.
oh, so yeah, it's like, so he wakes up and digs his way out of his grave and then wanders the world finding pieces of his stone heart. Like, fuck, that's dumb. Whatever. Fuck it. It's the story that won't leave me alone. It's the idea that just
Yeah, yeah.
keeps pestering me. And so I'm, working on another one now. And it's, I was jokingly calling it A Clash of Grannies for the first 80,000 words because I didn't have a title. And the two main characters are these sort of like grandmothers.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
again, I'm like, this is why am I doing this?
Um,
But it's the story that I love. It's the idea that wouldn't leave me alone. So that's the one I got to
yeah.
write. I've never been sort of able to like be like, oh, okay, what's selling now? Oh, it's cozy fantasy. Oh, cool. I'll write a cozy fantasy. Like, I don't give a fuck. I
Yeah, yeah,
want to
yeah.
tell a story that's kind of bugging me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally agree. It's just funny because people keep talking about that, and um, I don't know. I had a author ask me recently because I got certain stuff that'll come out, this year and stuff, which I'm really excited for. I'm like, oh, my wife said, you have a lot to do. I was like looking at, I was like, yeah, I'll be fine. And then I looked, I was like, holy crap, I really do. I was like, I have to format, edit, and then I was like, I have to get all these things. I was like, but that's exciting to me, is not just talking about it. I actually get to do it, and I have a lot of stuff that I can prep this summer and next year. For like 2025 for me is about to be like crazy. I have like probably 5 or 6 books that'll come out in 2025, um probably at least. So I'm just like I was holding stuff back to rapid release, but
Mm.
I don't know. There's a couple of those like things like my wife asked me because we were listening to somebody's podcast because that's what I do because I drive, so she has to listen to podcasts with me. And she's like, "Oh, is that what you always do? Is like you just are you writing to market or are you, and or are you just doing your thing?" I was like, "I just write the story that I want to read, and I don't know. I was like talking about a couple authors like you, particularly for indie. I was like, I love indie because nobody really cares, like you just write whatever. And I think that those are the stories that are the most interesting, especially the ones that don't leave you alone. Kelly McCullough, when I interviewed him, talked about his Fallen Blade series, which if you haven't read is absolutely amazing. I think it'd be right up your alley actually. And they're quick, like dark fantasy. But yeah, he was like talking about like he did his web mage series and then he was talking about that and he's like, it just wouldn't leave me alone. And they wanted something, so he went back to his original idea that wouldn't leave him alone. And it's funny because he was one of the first people that I talked to about that. And now it's like every person I talk to with that type of idea, that's the one that sells the most. So to me, being the podcaster and trying to learn as a writer, I'm like, all right, I got several of these that won't leave me alone. They're really hard to write, but if I can, get through it, and do it well, like those are probably gonna be the ones that people want to read. So I just think that that's really interesting. If you name it anything other than Clash of the Grannies or Clash of Grannies, I'm gonna be really upset because to me that just sounds awesome. Like if I was to pick that up somewhere I just saw it, I'd be like paperback or Kindle. I would just be like, yep. Especially if your name's attached to it, I'll be like, yeah, I'm buying that and reading that.
Yeah,
So,
no, Clash of Grannies was it's I think working title now is Dust of the Dead.
oh, that's
Which
awesome.
fits much better.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool. That's really neat. Um, well now you got Granny stuck in my head. So now if I write something about grannies, I'm definitely gonna blame Michael R. Fletcher. So that's fair. I definitely want to talk, about some of the, the trilogies and things, that you've been finishing up and the series that, that you've been extending. But in terms of like Sin and Sorrow, how did that feel finishing that particular like trilogy just of the three so far? I just was curious about that one because you started that a while ago. I think that was the first one, you know, that was definitely the first book that I bought. I believe of yours, or it was Beyond Redemption. I bought Beyond Redemption, and then actually I bought Smoke and Stone because I absolutely just love the cover. But I was just curious how it felt to kind of finish that one off in particular.
Yeah, that one was I really like that one. That it did not turn out the way I thought it was going to
Mm,
turn out, because that was not a carefully plotted trilogy at all.
mm.
It was very much a like I had some ideas and then really I was just trying to write the characters as sort of honestly as I could. So I never really knew where it was going to go. I had ideas. I was just totally wrong. I love the way it came together in the end. Um, and I remember sitting back thinking like, people are either gonna love this or they're gonna fucking hate me. And I'm kind of like, but this is the way it ends. So fuck you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It was the third book was hard to write. I had a bunch of false starts, like two or three false starts where I get like 30,000 words into the book and then just didn't feel right. So I sort of shoved it on the back burner for a couple of years, wrote a pile of other books, finished trilogies. And then I guess 2022 sometime I started writing that one,
Mm.
because just pieces clicked, and I
Yeah,
went back to one of my so-called false starts and read what I had and was like, oh shit, this is fine, this is totally going to work.
yeah, yeah.
It was better than I thought, which probably means the very first false start was probably fine too, but I was just in the wrong headspace for it at the time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's out there now. Or is it? Yes, it is out there now. Yeah. Sorry, I'm having trouble keeping track of
You
the
like
dates.
I said before we got started, you had a lot come out. Feel like every time I turn around, I see your name somewhere. I was like, oh, that's really cool. But
Yeah.
sorry, you just mentioned something that I just wanted to touch on, like where it's clicking. First of all, false starts. I have a first fantasy book in my own like setting I've been working on for like, oh my God, I think I was 14, now I'm 36. It seems like I always say like for 14 years, 15 years, and then it just keeps going. But man, I feel you on the false starts. Like I have rewritten that draft same thing, like 15,000 words sometimes. I go up to 35, and I think I'm on like my fourth false start, and I just had to like set it aside and just be like, I'm gonna come back later. But I tell you, when things click, man, they click. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've taken away from you guys on your podcast was just like, and I can't remember which one of you said if it was you or Rob or Dirk or Jed, but one of you was like, yeah, I just like go and write something else. And I never have writer's block. And I'm so glad I listen to your guys' podcast just for that. Because when I don't write, I don't write for like weeks or months, but
Mm,
like if I just even like day by day go, and I'll work on maybe two things at once now, but even if I'm inching, like I have something. So, but now I feel like I'm getting things to click more, but I'm not forcing it as much. I'm one of the things I was working on, it's been like 6 months, and then all of a sudden the other day I was like, oh, I don't know. I was just like doing something with my son and a thought crossed my mind, and all of a sudden all the pieces fell into place and I finished a like 45 all 45 chapters of the outline, and I actually really liked it.
huh,
And then I finished another one that I was working on for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden now the story, all the pieces fit. So it's just
yeah,
funny that you mentioned those two things that I've just been thinking about personally, and I got some videos and stuff coming out on those, but that's really funny.
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
don't outline much really.
mm,
So when I'm 30,000 words into a false start or whatever, it's like I'm many chapters of actual like
yeah,
full
yeah.
written. Um, at best, what I've been doing recently, which really seems to work, I plot 3 chapters
Mm,
and that's it. I'll plot the next three. I
all
write
right.
them, then I stop
Yeah,
and go, okay, plot the next three because because I want to be surprised. The
yeah,
reader, if I'm not surprised, the reader probably won't be either. So I want to be surprised by how it ends. And also, you write 3 chapters, you look at what's happened, and now you go, okay, and now how are people going to react to
yeah,
what has happened? And you're no longer shoehorning character actions into a pre-planned plot. You're sort of
yeah, yeah,
it's evolving as it goes, and if it takes a weird direction, you just roll with it.
yeah, yeah. That's really smart. I think I'm gonna try to do that. I've been doing that with my Kindle Bella series, and I find it helps because I'm like they do the three, free or whatever, and I just wanted to tell a certain story, and I was like, well, I have to like tailor it to the medium, which actually helped me with the story, but that's helped me like in particular, um, yeah. But I think I'm gonna try that because I didn't think of that for like an actual book, so I think that that's really smart because sometimes I do get all the way, and with particular things and I'm like, damn, I didn't want that to happen, and then I feel like I just wasted all that time and effort to outline rather than write. So I'm gonna start trying that because that's a
Yeah.
really good exercise. That's
Yeah, I
cool.
tried doing like full book outlines, and then usually by 3 or 4 chapters, I am so far from what I outlined. I'm like, well, that was a fucking waste of time.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's I end up scrapping what I started with and just running with following wherever the story sort of leads me. It gets more
yeah,
fun
yeah.
anyway. And I
No, it
don't
makes sense.
planning is boring.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I like to know certain things, but like I always know how the book's gonna end, but like how people get there, I know that when we're going on vacation, I know where I'm going, but I don't know, maybe I'll take a different route or maybe we go stop off here and instead of another way. And I feel like that's how I'd like to write too, because my old co-teacher, I got a new job, so but my old friend, he was like, you always have a better idea the next day. Like we will plan for 2 weeks. Him and I would plan for 2 weeks for a lesson, and then all of a sudden I'd come in the next day and it'd be like the day of we're doing something and I'm like, I have a better idea, and we have like 45 minutes to get it ready. And then I'll tell him, I'll be like, well, you decide. And I'll be like, damn it, it is a better idea. And then we'd be scrambling,
Yeah.
to fix it. And then it definitely went better. But I feel like that's always how it is when I outline, like a whole book or whatever, because I'm always like, oh, I always have a better idea, once I'm start writing. Because I feel like I'm more of a discovery writer, So, but I'm going to try that for actual books now. I think that's what's been stopping me for a few recently was I had outlined and then, I was having trouble getting to
Yeah.
certain things.
I
So
just
I
find
think that makes a lot of
the
sense.
the act of outlining boring. I and that's just me. I know it works for a lot of people, and that's totally cool. But I start like outlining, and I'm like 3, 5, 7 chapters in, and I'm just like, this isn't writing. I'm bored. I don't want to do
Yeah, yeah,
this.
yeah. Yep.
So it's everyone's got their own thing, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think that makes total sense. That's why I keep podcasting. Every time I'm like, "Oh, I'm just gonna finish up this third season and then take a break. And then somebody will say something like I think it's like the last six people I've interviewed. I'm just like, holy crap. I'm like, if I had not I keep talking to my kids about my three social studies class about cultural diffusion, and I'm just like living it every time I interview. So something that you say that seems really small, all of a sudden, helps me finish a book. You know what I mean? Which is kind of why I keep listening to podcasts and why I keep doing podcasts. But I feel like that's what people do really well in an industry, is they talk to people and figure out what works for them. So I think that makes total sense. But I'm gonna try that actually the next couple weeks because I got a lot to finish up. So I think that's what stopped me with my current novellas. I'm trying to figure out where I had switched some things, so I'm trying to figure out, what the outline, and I keep getting stopped. And I really wanted to contact Sarah and be like, I don't care when you're free, like I'll just give you all three, and just tell me when, you're available. I just think for some reason I just feel like she'll do a really good job with the character, because she's awesome. But I just really feel like, reading her stuff, and how many people I've talked to, um, who've worked with her, I'm just like, I just want her. I don't even care if it's this year, honestly. I'll just that's the thing, nice thing about indie, right? Rearrange stuff. But I think that'll help me finish that second one, is I think that's I'm just doing too far in advance, and don't know what's going on. So I think I have to get in that character's headspace. So I think that makes total sense. But so you mentioned, like, in terms of coming back to a series. Now, I gotta ask you this. So I thought it was such an interesting move on your part. I'd love to talk to you, you and Clayton, together, you and Anna at some point too. I think they're just different things come up with co-authors, but how did you come up with that decision? That A War to End All was just so hard, to
Yeah,
finish on your own. Like,
yeah,
so I just wanted to give people, a little bit of a headway. So you and Clayton Snyder have Nariska Grounds, you guys, co-authored. I know you guys are working on some other stuff too, but so did you just find that it was easier with somebody else, or I just want
yeah.
to know how you made that decision.
It started with Norilska. So Norilska, I had a magic system sort of sketched out. I had the basics of a plot sketched out. I had most of a story, not much character work done. I had the magic system really nailed, and I was like, all right, this is fucking cool. But I was in the middle of writing one or two other books at the
Mm.
time, and kind of jokingly thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could find somebody to write half this fucking book for me so that I can, doesn't pull me away from the other stuff too much. I had just read Clayton's Obsidian Psalm, really because, I was became aware of it right around, the time the Obsidian Path stuff was coming out, and was just like, oh, similar name, gonna take a look. It was utterly insane, which I liked, which I thought, made Clayton sort of like the perfect choice for, the
Oh
co-write
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
Um, the last Manifest Delusions book, I it's tied up in a lot of sort of messed up emotions for me. A lot of it is the series felt like failure.
mm,
The first book was published by Harper Voyager and diluted as all hell at the time. I thought, oh shit, I'm a published author with a major publisher.
yeah,
Like this is it. This is my break. I'm in. I'm going to be a, like famous fantasy author. And then they passed on the sequel because low sales, and that I'd already written the sequel at that point, The Mirror's Truth, and that really just felt like such a crushing failure. Um, I couldn't write the third book. Like every time I sat down to try, it was
yeah,
just like, why fucking bother? Which is stupid because Beyond Redemption's still selling. The Mirror's Truth has sold really well, won a bunch of awards and shit. But I still was relating that series to failure. Um, it came time where I was like, you know what, I can't pull a. I got to finish this.
yeah,
Enough people have invested in the first two books, and you're like, I'm getting daily messages at this point, like, oh hey, is the third book going to come out? Blah 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 blah. Um, and I was, thought about Norilska Groans and how good it was working with Clayton, how easily we worked together. And if Manifest Delusions is anything, it's crazy. And so once again, I was like, damn it, he'd be perfect for this.
yeah, yeah.
So I messaged him, and much like with Norelska, I said, dude, I have a really terrible idea. uh and like before I had said anything else, he's like, oh fuck it, I'm in. Like
Yeah.
he didn't even care what it was. He's just like, yeah, I'm in.
Clayton's
So
like that Family Guy meme, yeah, where he's like, "You son of a gun, I'm in."
yeah,
Every time.
yeah. And because I knew that if I was gonna if I had to sit down and write this thing by myself, it was never gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah,
I had sort of given up on writing it, um, until I started thinking about getting Clayton to write half of it, to take half the characters, and it worked. beautiful. Like it, I think within what, 3 or 4 months we had a first draft.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I just thought it was so funny. I when you guys had, put up the cover and everything, and whatever status you had for that, you kind of explained a little bit. I had somebody that was like, "Can you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't, doesn't matter. It's India. Like you do whatever the hell you want." And that, but it was just so interesting. And I I don't know. Like we were all just like, I felt like a couple of people when they asked me, we talked about it. I was like, I don't know. I didn't think of that. I'm like, that makes perfect sense to me, particularly, I remember the one stats you had, like your reasoning. And I don't know. I feel like it opened up like a whole new world for people in the industry to be like, if I'm having trouble, I can just go, and find somebody, and I'm like, hey, that's genius. But I just think it was a smart move on your part, and I've actually shelved a couple of things myself to be like, you know what, I probably need a co-author for these at some point. And once I get some stuff out there, I think it's kind of hard, when you're new, because you don't even know your own style, versus things like that. But yeah, it was
yeah.
funny too talking about you guys together because when you guys had talked, about working together the first time. I had people, they're like, "Oh man, that's like peanut butter and jelly, like that's gonna work really well." And I was like, "Damn straight." So that was really cool. And Clayton and I had talked about that in our last interview too, earlier this season, just about like the process a little bit, and stuff like that. And I think he said that he had a secret project, so it's kind of cool to, I think it was like after him and I had enough time to, when I think I had to reschedule a couple times because of my son and stuff. My wife broke her foot twice this summer, so it's been crazy. But it was so funny that, then you guys had that. I was like, oh, that makes sense. It's like if you go back to the first couple episodes of this season, you'll actually hear him talking about it. But I think that was just smart on your part instead of, I think a lot of people would just try to, trudge through on their own. And I think that would waste a lot of time and you get frustrated, right? And then you'd say to yourself, see, I was right. And then you wouldn't write it for who
Yeah.
knows how long,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
I have in various documents, I think over 100,000 words of false starts
Wow.
on that novel, and just every time I'd sort of grind to a halt, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I really had just given up on it.
Yeah. You know, like those little mazes, that you do. I just want to talk about that because you make such a good point with the false starts too. I just want to talk about for newer people because I have a lot of newer authors who have come in and been messaging me and watching and stuff. So, you're a long time veteran. So I just think it's interesting. I just want to point out, like, I do it all the time where I'll have a false start and I'll save them because you never know if I have a particular idea, that I can change. Maybe it's a different story, or maybe I take it, characters or change magic, whatever, places. I had a whole thing that I was working on recently, and I changed the entire setting because my friend's like, "You just love desert settings so much because of what you grew up on." I'm like, "Yeah, because it's cool." But he's like, "I don't think this is a desert setting book." And once I moved it actually to like I'd say like Eastern European setting, in like 17th century, and all of a sudden everything fell into place. So I can't wait to, get going. But yeah, I just think that, talk about false starts. I mean, I think that some people think a false start is a bad thing or it means a book's not, that you shouldn't write that book. But I just want to point out that, I think that sometimes you just got to get those false starts out of there, kind of like that maze, right? So
Yeah.
then figure out the route that you can go. Otherwise, you'll never get anything written or, you might have a particular story that really needs to be told or people are really going to like. And I think sometimes people think false starts are it's failure or whatever, but it's words and you learn from the process. So I think
Yep.
that that's
And
just smart on your part. So
writing is a little bit like reading. You sometimes you pick up a book and you're reading it and you're like, I don't like it. You set it aside.
yep.
Years later, you go, fuck, did I read that? I don't think I did. You pick it up again, and you're like, this is amazing.
Yep.
It happens with books too.
Yep.
Blackstone Heart. I tried to write that in the 90s. I
Mm.
got maybe 40, 50,000 words into a novel, into that. And, at the time I was much younger. And it was just like, Jesus, writing is hard work. Like, this is bullshit. And I didn't know how to, there was no self publishing in, what was that, 94 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it was too much work to finish the novel. So I set it aside, but that story was, like decades later. I was like, I think I can write that story now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went back, I reread everything that I'd written, and it was like, no, this really is bad. It's really awful. So none of it, got used, but it sort of refreshed the ideas and the story and the world, and
Yeah, yeah.
and like you, I've got a folder full of unfinished novels, where I'm like, there's some really cool ideas in there, and someday maybe I'll go back to some of them. I don't know. The ideas are the you know, the idea is the easy part. Writing the book is
Mhm.
the hard part.
No, totally. It's so funny they said that I've been taking stuff on my old laptop from like Scrivener and oh my God, I forget what the other one I used, Shakespeare or something like that. And I was taking everything and uploading it because I was like, I'll just upload all these old folders and you never know, these false starts. And I found one and I was like, I was in a writing group, um, and I was like, it was like for school too. Like I was with like other educators that were authors and different stuff, and I was writing this dark fantasy, and I was just like, oh my God, this is like so awful. But and like, clearly, I mean, I think it was like 8 years ago, but when I went back to the idea, I was like, nope. I wanted to take like an adventuring party who had been together for like 2 decades basically, and who have always been relied upon. And then I wanted to, instead of taking them at the start, I want to take them at the end of their career, when their knees hurt and when they have all these
Yeah,
enemies, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And just all this stuff's the kingdom's falling down around them. And I wanted to see what would happen if, you put them up against like the Dark Brotherhood essentially and just whooping their butts, like I wanted to see character wise what would happen. And went the other day and I was like, you know what? I was like, that actually does sound really cool still. But at some point I'll go back and and do whatever. But I just have people they're like, yeah, I just deleted it. I just did this. And I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, why would you do that? I don't know. I keep everything. I have stuff from
oh yeah.
college that I wrote. That's
I I,
horrible, but I
I
kept
never
it.
delete anything. I've got,
Yeah, yeah,
stuff
yeah.
from early '90s, early attempts at novels and stuff. So I always
Yeah,
sort of wanted to write, but was too fucking lazy.
that's funny. Well, I do have to go back to our first interview where you had said to me, I was like, I think I asked you if you like wrote ideas down to come back to later. And you're like, no, I don't do that. You're like, if I
Yeah,
forget it, then it wasn't worth writing. I thought it was so funny because I used to do it all the time. And even after our interview, I did it for a while. And every once in a while, maybe I have like a title or a character. Like somebody said something the other day on like a video game, I think, or movie, and I was like, God, that would be really cool. Like it was like a moon singer, and I was like, what would a moon singer do? What would a moon singer be like? And I just kind of wrote that down. And I've been playing with like the class or whatever, or whatever. Maybe at some point I'll have a cool character that does something like that. But I just don't do it like I used to because I think you're so right. Is I had so many things. I have like 8 ideas that just will not leave me alone, and those are the 8 novels, that I've been working on for a while. And then like a couple novellas with them. But yeah,
yeah.
so I just wanted you to know that you were definitely right. So at least for me. Other people that might work for them, but yeah, like
Yeah.
me, like I'll just think constantly over the last 3 years about the 8 ideas that I pretty much had and just
Yeah.
kind of keep going from there.
Yeah,
So it's kind
I combine it with being incredibly forgetful.
of
What that means is an idea, a story idea has to be really intensely good for me
yeah,
to remember it,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I forget everything.
That dad
So if
brain,
I
man.
remember it a week later, it's like, okay, shit, this one's actually still with me. And then, sometimes it's months or years later,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you there. I think that makes total sense. But do you mind just talking a little bit about, your upcoming novella, with Anna Smith Spark? I just think that it just looks awesome and I'm an instant fanboy, like right off the bat. The cover looked amazing. I love the title. The blurb sounded awesome. I don't even think I got to the blurb. I was just like, yep, done. I was like, Mike and Anna, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just curious if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think back in like late 2017, early 2018, Adrian from Grimdark Magazine approached Anna and I, and asked us about doing originally the first idea was we were going to do serial fiction.
Oh, that's
uh,
cool.
and he was sort of going to publish it, I think on their site, kind of thing, like one episode every couple of weeks, kind of
Oh,
thing.
that's cool.
um, we were really bad at scheduling stuff, because obviously we're both writing other stuff at the same time, and so
Yeah.
we were pretty much incapable of hitting any deadlines or turning stuff in on time, like at all. And then COVID landed, and everybody's lives sort of like fell apart. dealing with that and work life shit, um, but we sort of kept plugging away at it. And then I think earlier this year, earlier 2023, we actually sort of had a readable draft. So we polished it, went off to Sarah for editing. There was some like minor rewrite stuff, but it's a full-on grimdark novella. Uh, Anna is a monster. She's just an insanely talented writer.
Yeah.
So I trying to be in the same book is like, dude, like, don't fuck this up. A lot of pressure to sort of I can't match her prose, but at least not appear too horrendously amateurish beside her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's we sort of this I think hopefully like really cool story came together, radically different characters. She's writing a couple, I'm writing a couple. It kind of clicked fairly well. Whereas like with Clayton and I, we were in constant communication, planning the next couple of chapters and doing all that. With Anna and I, it was chaos. We kind of had no idea what the other person was doing.
Mm.
Sometimes we'd talk out ideas. I rarely would take notes, and by the time the video chat had ended, I'd forgotten most of what we talked about anyway. Um, and so it was chaos. I am stunned it turned out.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. I actually, I think you guys are the most popular topic that I've talked to people about recently, with like new releases and stuff like that. People are like, "Did you see this?" I was like, I had no idea that that was a thing. I just thought it was super, super cool. And of course, with Adrian and Grimdark, magazine being in there, I just think that that was like the perfect, like perfect storm, if you will, for people just to be, like captivated. But and then Felix did the cover, right?
Uh,
Why
I'm
am I
not sure.
blanking?
It looks like Felix's style, but I've got the
You
sneaking
don't think
suspicion it's not him. I can't remember.
I forget because he shared it the other day. But anyways, I don't know. It definitely looks like a style. I forget who did it, but I know somebody. Adrian just tagged somebody. I'm just having trouble with the holidays and being a dad right now. I just drove back yesterday from Michigan, so it was just like I got like nothing today up in the brain tank. But I just thought it was so cool. My wife, she like saw it over my shoulder when I was at dinner the other day, so I just keep going back to it. And I was talking to people about it. I was sending it to people. Um, Two of my friends I think are just gonna like be super into it. Like that's just like the three of us, like that's like our thing.
Yeah.
So I can't wait for, at some point, for you guys to have, um hardcover, print copies, whatever. 'Cause I think both of them would just love them. But yeah, I was like, so I was doing it. She goes, "Oh my God." She's like, another piece of art that you're gonna have to, I was like, I just look at that cover and the title, and I'm just like, it just gives me so many ideas, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah. The cover
you
is a scene from later in the book,
oh
with
man.
three of the characters, and the title, because we had no idea what we were calling it. It was just
Hmm.
the GDM serial fiction for a long
Oh yeah,
time.
yeah.
And in the shadow of the dying is actually just one of the lines that Anna dropped in
Oh,
there,
that's
in passing, and it was like, oh fuck, that is a good line,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it clicked and it stuck.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I looked at it and then I mean I did read the blurb after that, but I was like looking for the pre-order right away. I was just like I put it in my calendar to to keep checking and stuff. That's where I think I was like 30 seconds later I messaged you or commented. I was like I needs it, I wants it, like I must have my precious. But yeah, my wife she's like, "Oh my God." She goes, "That is really cool." I was like, "This is literally like the type of book that just makes me want to write, if that makes sense." So I'm like really excited and just reading the blurb, I'm like, "Oh, this is like totally my thing." And it's funny because like, certain books you're just like, I feel like if you've read enough, like, there's just certain books you just know, like even if, I don't know, I just think certain books you just know, right? It's like wine or beer, you just know it's your flavor, if that makes sense. And I just know that that's going to be one of mine. So I'm like really
Yeah,
excited for that one.
yeah.
But yeah,
And
super cool.
it's, I mean, it's Anna, right? So it's going to be insane. She wrote this demon character,
Mm.
so demonic point of view character, and it's utter madness. So good, so good.
Oh, that's
Uh,
really cool.
yeah, it's a lot of fun because it's this hopefully there's this sort of like strange humor in there. You've got the third best assassin, trying to kill the king while trapped in a city under siege, and there's this demon rampaging the streets. It's chaos.
No, that's just awesome. That's super cool. I I just thought it was interesting, because I was thinking, I was like, oh, like, like you and Clayton to me, like I had somebody mention, like, oh yeah, Clayton and Mike. I'm like, yep. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I had somebody else be like, Anna and Mike. I was like, oh man, I was like, I was just so happy to see that because to me it just added kind of good way to put it. I'm really interested to see how you two work together after, you and Clayton. So and like someone else mentioned that to me too. They're like, "Oh man, I'm like really excited." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like and I think from the outside perspective, seeing both of your guys, the stuff like you and Anna's, separately, I think people were just like myself were just really excited to, to see what the two of you put together. So that was probably like my best surprise, like in terms of the book community, like in terms of like 2023. So people ask me like most anticipated for 2024. I was like, oh, that's definitely my pick right there. I didn't even have to come up with a YouTube list or or anything. But yeah, that's like super cool. Um, and then yeah, I just think that's really neat. I just find it interesting, like I just talked to author recently, and I think it was MT Zimney and I were talking and just about like novellas and stuff. And I'm like, I love novellas. I eat novellas up. And Anthony Ryan, I don't know if you've read his Pilgrimage of Swords or anything like
Mhm.
that. Like
Oh
those
yeah.
novellas, oh my God, man! Like I love them, and I cannot stand that I found them before he's done with the last one. Because I like will get the new one, I'll just eat it up. So I love novellas, but I definitely have seen novellas recently. I feel like are back on the rise. So I just think that you guys taking the serialized stories and then doing that, I think it just makes total sense because I just feel like I've seen more and more recently. And I know I've been buying them, especially for Kindle with my kid. It just helps me out, in between the bigger reads and and things like that. Helps me feel like I'm accomplished. But people have had just like amazing stories. I feel like a lot of times novellas now are almost the same thing like you guys are doing, like their own serialized thing. Because sometimes novellas I'm like, oh, do I have to read, In the Name of the Wind to then read Patrick's novellas? I feel like I do, at least the ones I've read. Whereas I just want like my own serialized story, of your characters of world or a concept or something or adventures. I like those old Sinbad like stories, and I just
Yeah.
think that I don't know, that just to me just sounds super cool. I'm working on my own thing that kind of like you guys, and I was like, oh, I love to read this. I was like, I think it'd be really fun, to write, and I think that's where it's more my thing. But I think it's really cool, so I'm really looking forward to that one. But uh, and then just in terms of I know we're kind of like wrapping up on time here. I just was curious, in terms of, it's been 2 years, since we interviewed. I'm curious, kind of like, what was like your favorite moment within like the last year? Like, could you pick one in particular? Or was there a moment where you're just like, damn, that was really cool? Like, I was just curious, kind of like, what was the thing that you were like, oh, that was neat?
I'm
You
so
had a
just
lot of
kind
them.
of wrapped up in writing. And I'm not really sort of stepping outside of myself to look at it.
Sure.
Um, I, I my favorite moment in 2023, the one that I keep thinking about, which is hilarious. It's book related, but it's not sort of specific book. Um, I overheard my daughter describe me as a famous-ish author.
That's awesome.
And it's like, yeah, okay.
Well,
It was so funny.
to
Just
be
like,
fair, wait till the
all
middle
right.
grade comes out, and then Rickordian status, hopefully, like right off the bat. So, and then she'll have to change that, and then you can put that on the book cover, like a quote from her. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just
It
I
was
just
just
found it
a funny
interesting. But
moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just was curious because I feel like there were so many times where I talked to somebody, they're like, "Oh, that's really cool that Mike did that," or that happened. I was like, "I know." I was like, I feel like 2023 was like the year of Mike. Personally, I was like, every time I turned around, you had something really cool. First I saw you and Clayton. the war to end all, and then you had Sin and Sorrow, and then this happened, with Anna. I was just like, man, been a good year for Mike, it looks like. So
Yeah, it was a good year. It's there's all this stuff going on in the background that no one else sees, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so like people are like, oh my God, you've got so many books coming out in fairly rapid succession. You must be like, you're just cranking stuff out. It's like, not really. Like some of the stuff that's like Storm Beneath the World, which is coming out in
mm,
April.
yeah, yeah,
I wrote
forever.
that 2 years ago. And then, went through editing and went to my agent. He shopped it for a year and a half, wasn't able to sell it. And so now it's sort of lined up for self-publishing. But because of, the timing on, we ran into trouble with an artist
Mm.
turning in a bunch of AI junk. Um, like
Oh yeah,
things got delayed. And then all of a sudden I had 4 books, written, edited, covers done, ready to go. And I was like, oh shit, okay, now I gotta like schedule releases for these.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I figured one every like 4 months was probably fast enough.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
That's
it's,
still a lot to do. Yeah,
yeah, and I mean, it looks like like all of a sudden I've just cranked out 4 books in no time, but
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the reality.
Yeah, yeah. But speaking of that book, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, I told a couple people, I was going to be reading and reviewing that one for you, but I just want to make sure, before we get done, that people have that on their radar. I love the cover with like the insect and everything. It just looks awesome. But can you tell us a little bit about that one and then kind of how that came about?
Yeah, so that was a couple ideas sort of clicking together. I
Mm.
wanted to write a non-human fantasy, so
Yeah,
there's no people in the book, no humans.
that's cool.
The characters are all large warrior praying mantis types. They fly huge monsters, in combat. Um, and so that was sort of like the character background. I wanted a hive society, but really as a way of looking at tribes, human tribal behavior, of course,
Yeah.
because it's not actually insects. um, and then I had this magic system tinkering around in the back of my head based on uh, endocannabinoids, um, you, sort of a naturally induced euphoria.
Mm.
Um, so like I get it. If I do a pile of cardio, I get high. My
Yeah.
body just cranks this shit out. It dumps it in my brain. If I do something I'm really enjoying, like I have moments writing books where I'm basically just high as fuck, and not on any drugs or booze or anything at the time. I just really like it. Makes me really, really happy.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that as a magic system,
Oh, that's cool.
where these sort of insects, they each have a talent, and the more they use the talent, the better they get at it, the more powerful it becomes. But they also get this insane rush of euphoria every time they use their talent, and it that euphoria grows as well. And so you've got this sort of like built-in end date where you're basically a junkie. You're using your talent over and over and over again just to get that rush. And you're no longer sort of capable of taking care of yourself. And, they eventually they starve to death,
Mm.
because they're just lost in this loop of using their talent over and over
Yeah.
again. So this sort of a magic system based on what writing books feels like to me.
Oh,
Um, and it just all kind of clicked together. Um, yeah. So I will see what people think. But that was the other part. I wanted to write something atypical. And so the book takes place on a mega gas giant world in the upper atmosphere. These insects live on the backs of huge floating balloon creatures,
mm.
and sort of they've evolved this symbiosis. So it's all, just typical fantasy fare.
That's awesome. Right. Well, when you had, it was like what, a couple days ago, you were asking about people like to read a review, and who was interested. I was just like, I saw the cover, and I think I got like a sentence or two into the blurb. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to give myself too much credit. And I was just like, yeah, I'll do it. I was like, it just sounds really cool. I was like, I just want to see how you did insect people in particular. I think non-human fantasy is like really cool. GD Penman does a really cool one with like his Strata series, with like rats and mice and just different things. I love folk. Like I've been writing this one book with this amazing like panther guy for a while, and I just always like to see how other people kind of do things and just
Mhm.
get ideas. And I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. I was like, it sounds awesome. I was like, but it also is like kind of like writing research to kind of see what I like and don't like, for my own,
Yeah. Yeah,
species.
it's a lot of fun. I mean, so they're eight-limbed creatures.
Oh,
Uh,
that's even cooler.
and so I'm like, that's going to change their brain structure.
Yeah,
So they've got these bifurcated brains where they can, two halves of the brain can be doing different things at the same time.
that's cool.
So, when they fight, like half of their brain is dealing with one half of their body, the other half's controlling the other half. And you get these sort of insane battles where they're simultaneously loosing arrows at distant targets while spear fighting with someone who's right there.
Oh,
And
that's
they're
cool.
just totally fine with that, totally comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've got what is it, like two different sets of eyes and all these sort of secondary eyes for watching for predators and stuff, and trying to write all of that but do it seamlessly so it's not like you're never info dumping that crap because that's boring.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a lot of fun. It was a lot of
Oh,
fun.
that's super cool. That's cool. It's like that. What's the guy's name from Mortal Kombat with the four arms? Like I always, and like John Carter of Mars too. Like the aliens have like multiple limbs and stuff. And I liked how Edgar Rice Burroughs like does that. Like that to me, like always like made me think like, oh, that'd be really cool. So I got a couple hands on my sci-fi. They have just different things. And yeah, you're right. It's really fun when you're like, how would they do that? That kind of thing. It's I feel like it's just different. People ask me because they're like, you have so many. I have like giant warrior pandas. I have giant, or like gorilla people, like whatever. My friend he goes, you'll take any animal and make them like humanoid. I go, it's just so much more fun, to think of my fantasy world as like anything could be like humanoid. I was like, then you get like different cultures, that they then it naturally adds to different conflicts, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I always think about like how Native Americans like thought of like, oh yeah, you can use the land, no problem. And then settlers thought they bought it, and they're like, what do you mean? Like that's not a thing that we really do. And it was just that mistranslation. I was thinking like, how cool would that be for, your book? Like, and I don't know, just like then interacting them with, humans. I just think that you'd get so much conflict out of it, because you have different cultures. And yeah,
yeah,
I just think it adds, like you
yeah,
said, like it
different
just,
worldviews.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it just makes it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a story coming out in January in Grimdark Magazine,
Ooh,
which is it's called The Last War Dog. And so it's this sort of sorcerously altered dog character.
that's cool.
That's all his point of view. But that was a blast to write. Just going, okay, like how does a dog think? Now it's smarter, but he's still a dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to see how people like that one.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to definitely check that out. That sounds awesome. That's really neat. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that one. Like I said, I got you like my second reading review for 2024, so I like bumped it up there once I read the full blurb. After I went back, you're like, yeah, here, I'll send it to you. So I went in, I was like, I should probably read the whole blurb first, and then as I got going, I was like, yeah, it's definitely my thing. So I bumped everything up. So that's why I haven't put out the list yet, because I didn't want anybody to get offended or anything. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to have Andy, Peliquin, and then you like right off the bat. So I'm hoping it kind of jumpstarts me for 2024. I have a lot of writing to get done and finish. My wife and I have been talking about schedules and things, and I was kind of looking at the paper and I was like, oh God, I was like, this is going to be kind of a big one. But I feel like I have to read now. Like before, it was I feel like I was at a spot where I think writing was getting in the way of reading, and vice versa. But now I'm at that point where it's like I'm doing it to take a break. So I'm not watching TV really or anything. So I feel like it's been a lot different, but I feel like now if I don't write in a day, I'm just like, oh, that was like a waste of a day, or even if it's like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to getting reading and writing in for 2024. That's been like my main goal. But yeah, that sounds awesome. I keep forgetting about Grimdark Magazine. I haven't gone on there in a little bit, so I'm gonna have to go back and start reading again. for the I have all these other magazines too that I was subscribed to for a while because people like you had really cool stuff. I feel like Warhammer too, like you guys got really cool stuff, like you and Rob and some other people I know. So I'm always trying to get back to that. I feel like there's just not enough time in the day to read and write
It's
everything that I want to
it's
do.
just
Even if I just did it
too
full
many
time,
books and
it's like,
stories out there to keep up on top of.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's totally true. Cool. Well, we're gonna be wrapping up, but I just want to, give you some time too. We talked about quite a few things. Like I said, you had out the last couple of years, a lot of things you have upcoming. But is there anything else you can tell us about, any projects or anything like that? Anything else that you have going
I
on?
think we've talked about pretty much
Okay,
everything.
cool.
Yeah,
Want to make sure I didn't miss anything because that was a lot. But
yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I think we hit all the important shit.
okay,
You
cool.
know,
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to, like I said, I'm looking forward to, you and your, daughter Charlotte's in middle grade. I just always, I always kind of consider this like my video journal diary, if you will. But it's so cool to see people like, Tatiana Obey. She talked about Sister Samurai on here just as an idea, and then that became a thing. And I read that book. That novella was awesome. I can't wait. I hope sounds like she's doing more. So I'm like really excited. The magic system was just cool. I love the characters. And then H.M. Long came on here and just talked about like maybe doing something like Daughter of Darkwater, and then that became a thing. So to me, it's just cool, to kind of see. So I'm like really anxious to see, I'm really anxious to read your middle grade. First of all, I just want to see how, your brain worked, doing that. And I don't know. I think it'll be really cool. You always have really cool ideas, so I'm really interested to see how, you're doing in middle grade. But yeah, I'm, really looking forward to seeing what you have in 2024. I feel like you have a lot of stuff that, has come out and is coming out. So I do think people would, list you as prolific, Mike, even if you don't want to say it yourself. I think, you work on things for a while, but still, I feel like ever since I started listening to this podcast, I feel like, you've had quite a bit, come out and happen, since then. And even like, you have four things. I mean, I think a lot of people, four things is a lot. Like I talked about releasing three novellas. They're like, wow, that's a lot. I'm like, well, same thing. I've been working on them for a couple of years and stuff. But it's funny when people never see the behind the scenes sort of things, the hours spending, in front of the computer or trying to run, right, and get the endorphins going to try and finish things. But it's always fun for us to see, the after effects. I feel like I like the director's cut though, which I feel like these kind of interviews are always a little bit, that kind of thing. But it's cool. But cool, Mike. Well, thank you so much for, taking the time. Like I said, I'd love to have you and Clayton or, you and Ann on at some point just to, I've been trying to get you and Clayton on for a while. My son was born, so it's just kind of crazy, but I can't wait to kind of, pick your guys' brain. I kind of, did each of you, in terms of halves for, episodes and stuff like that. But I would love to, ask you guys a couple of
yeah.
things.
Anytime. I'm sure into the new year, once Clayton's schedule frees up a bit, we
Yeah,
can get
yeah.
something in there. That'd be awesome.
I know that feeling. My schedule just started to free up again since my wife's foot healed. So she's like, "Do you want to like interview Mike tomorrow?" I'm like, "I would love to interview Mike at some point." So that's why I messaged you last night. I was like, "Cool." Like I got some dad free time today, so that worked out perfectly. But yeah, like I said, if you have anything else, that you want to talk about or come and shoot, talk about new books or ideas or whatever at any point, just let me know and I'll get you on. There's always a spot here for you, and I always
Sweet.
have fun
Thanks, man.
talking to you. So I look forward to the next chat.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, buddy. You have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you later.
All right, you too. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Bye.